I spend a lot of time with my team talking. It's like, how do you recapture revenue from places that it's been effectively taken from you? But if you do it the wrong way, you tend to lose all the money that's moved to this new pathway. Like curation is a good example where it's like, I'm not totally sure curation is good for publishers at all, but I've got a bunch of curators buying my inventory, so I don't know. I'm not turning it off anytime soon.
Paul Bannister, Chief Strategy Officer at Raptive, and the guy you'd absolutely grab a beer with if you're into ad tech, gaming, or just good conversation. He's the kind of industry titan who can make CPM sound interesting and ad fraud seem almost funny. Almost. Paul's been steering publishers through the messy maze of the digital ecosystem for years, and today, he's bringing his wit, insight, and a few eyebrow-raising opinions to the ADOTAT Show. Let's dive in before he invoices us for impressions.
Eric Troutman, the czar of the TCPA, isn't just the guy you call when your phone rings too much. He's the guy you must call. Need to navigate the legal minefield of robocalls, texts, and telemarketing nightmares? Troutman doesn't just give you advice. He hands you a roadmap, a compass, and a do not press this button sign. Practical? Yes. Actionable? Absolutely. And if you're not calling him first, let's be honest, you're probably making a mistake.
Welcome to the ADOTAT Show. I'm Pesach Lattin, your ever so humble host, but let's not kid ourselves. I'm just the appetizer. The main course here is Paul Bannister, the Chief Strategy Officer at Raptive. If there's an adtech Mount Rushmore, his face is on it, probably grimacing about CPM rates or rolling his eyes at yet another pointless innovation. Paul's been in the digital media longer than TikTok has been a gleam in Silicon Valley's eye, navigating the publishers through a minefield of programmatic potholes, identity politics, the cookie kind, and enough TLAs, three-letter acronyms, to choke an algorithm. Let's cut to the chase. Paul, welcome to the Lines Den. Try not to bill us for impressions. So how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
So the internet feels like it's going through a little bit of a midlife crisis. Everyone's buzzing about Web3, AI, and whatever decentralized means this week. But is this really innovation or just the same old web trained on skinny jeans and pretending to be cool?
I think some of the things that we're talking about that you kind of mentioned there are cool and really the next generation. Other things are unclear where they're going to get to, and time will tell.
So decentralization is a new religion of the tech bros. But let's get real. Isn't it just trading one big brother for a network of slightly more annoying younger siblings?
So it's interesting. Like I have been a negative, I would say, on decentralization, definitely on the kind of pessimistic side of what you were saying there for a while. But I, in the last couple of months, moved a lot of my social time over to Blue Sky, and have really liked it. And I'll say two things about it. One, I think that what makes it good is they hide the decentralization. Like it's a small element of it, where some of the earlier ones like Mastodon and things like that that at least I had played with, I found overwhelmingly complicated, and the decentralization made them like not fun to use, whereas Blue Sky kind of hides it. But on the flip side, now that I'm using it, I'm like, hey, it is kind of nice that if Blue Sky's owners go crazy, then the collective we can just like pick up and move somewhere else easily is kind of a nice thing. So I would say that for me, the jury's out a little bit, but I think that maybe there's a road there of getting into something better in the future.
Right. So about a year ago, everyone was talking about blockchain and those bored apes. But honestly, has Web3 achieved anything besides inflating egos and some people's bank accounts?
I am very much in the pessimist camp on any of that stuff. And I think it's all sort of, I think Web3 is a weird brand. Like I think it has little to do with like the web as we all think about it in terms of a place that you can go and look at websites and browse around and whatever else. Like I think it was a good marketing term, but I don't think has achieved anything. And I feel like, to your point about bored apes and whatever, which I can't remember, was that a year ago or more than that at this point? Like it feels like all that stuff has sort of died a death, and maybe there's some good idea there somewhere, but it does not seem to have appeared yet.
What about blockchain and banners? I have to ask you, someone was pitching that from the show, wanted to come speak on here. And I'm honestly, I'm pessimistic too. I don't actually believe in that. Do you think that's ever going to be something?
I don't see like the real reason. It's like a whole bunch of overhead to solve a fairly limited problem in a lot of cases. Like I'm not a proponent. From my knowledge, most of the companies that have tried things like that have not gotten anywhere. So I'm with you.
So is AI either our savior Or is it like some future robot overlord? What's your take? Revolution or just a fancy autocorrect?
I'm more of a believer in AI. I'm not sure I'm like the absolute, by 2032 robots will control the world. I'm not sure I'm in that camp exactly, but I do think like it's pretty transformative, and I see within our company tons of people using it in really creative ways to really make their jobs easier and be able to do things they could never do before. And I use it for a bunch of things that are interesting. So I do think it's much more transformative than the others, but I think we probably don't yet understand how it's really going to play out over the next 5, 10 years, and what things it's going to influence.
Have you using it in any of what you're doing?
In my day-to-day job, like I use ChatGPT pretty regularly, just like the stupid stuff that everybody does, like help me make this email sound less annoyed, or tell me about this thing that I don't know much about, like just the basic uses. I've been more reliant on my teams internally to figure out like creative ways to like really make it work for cool things, and seeing some pretty good results there.
So do you think in 10 years, will the web be a sci-fi utopia with flying ads and VR billboards? Or are we just stuck in a slightly shinier version of today's internet?
I think the question is who, can, if you think about like maybe for lack of a better way of describing it, like the web versus the internet, the web being things you access through a browser versus the internet, like literally everything that connects to it. I think the question for the web is like, can the web be relevant as more things like CTV, like TikTok, Reels, and whatever that are sort of like not the web? Like as those eat more and more and more time, can the web build things that are cool and great and better, and like grow that their share, the web share of the pie again? And I think that's a really important question. Like I know we're thinking a lot about and working on some things to try to make things better. Those platforms that are pulling attention and time elsewhere, like they are forces to be reckoned with, and they're what real people like. So you gotta compete.
Yeah, I think I read that less than 20% of Gen Z is on the web, as we call it, the WWW, the World Wide Web, and most of them just are on apps. They never leave their apps.
Yeah.
So they're getting all their news from TikTok. They're getting all their recipes from Instagram or whatever, but
Yep.
they're never leaving the app
Yeah, I think
ecosystem.
that's a true thing. And I think even when they go to the web, it's like in the in-app browser that they're still technically in Instagram, but like maybe they've
Right,
seen a web page, but they don't even differentiate at that point. Like it's Instagram.
right, because I mean a lot of the Instagram shopping pages are made for Instagram specifically. So when you click on there, that
Yep.
it's actually, even though it is HTML, it's specifically for that browser.
Yep, 100%.
So what about the metaverse? What happened to that?
A funny way, I actually do wonder whether, I don't want to give too much credit here, but like Meta was like ahead of its time. And like I actually think with the rise of AI and better VR tech and AR tech, that like the metaverse might actually become a thing. But it's like it's still further away than everybody hoped. But you can see,
Right.
if you look at like the progression of the AI text models, the AI photo models, the AI video models. Last week, OpenAI's Sora came out, which is like pretty impressive, like automated video generation. And you think about applying that technology into like virtual experiences, like that could actually be pretty cool. Obviously not there yet, but like I'm a bit more optimistic now than I was a couple of years ago that could be a really big thing in the future.
So if the internet was a person, would it be a washed-up actor living off of Cameo bookings or a hipster trying to make vinyl TikTok famous?
That's a binary question. I'm an optimist. I believe, I'm not sure the hipster is the best exact incarnation, but like I believe that the internet is constantly evolving and changing, and companies can innovate on it to create what users wanted. I mean, again, 5 years ago, like who would have known what TikTok was and why vertical videos would be such a huge thing? And like maybe 5 years is a little bit too not enough. 7 years ago, whatever. Like these things change
Well,
fast, and
I
the
think
internet
5 years ago,
evolves.
most people would not known what TikTok was.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
And I wonder if 5 years, if people will know what TikTok is in 5 years in the future. Maybe in January will come and TikTok will be destroyed, and
Mm-hmm.
and the next generation will go, "What the heck's a TikTok?" They'll have
Yeah.
some other app,
Exactly. Like to some level, if you remove TikTok from the equation, it's just like short form vertical video content. What's the next iteration beyond that of like how people consume media in ways that we don't understand today,
psychically.
psychically, or the metaverse? Maybe that is the next thing after this, and we'll see.
Well, if you ask people on Fortnite or what does my son play? I forgot what that Roblox a lot.
Roblox, yeah,
That's
huge.
that's a little metaverse. If they could connect it together, that would be great.
Yeah, Roblox is one of the best examples of like a quasi metaverse that exists today.
So let's move on to ads. The ecosystem. It's a glorious dumpster fire, hidden fees, phantom impressions, and fraud everywhere. If this industry were a dating app, it would be all red flags. So how do you not flip the table and just walk out?
It's so hard. I spend a lot of time with my team talking. It's like, how do you recapture revenue from places that it's been effectively taken from you? But if you do it the wrong way, you tend to lose all the money that's moved to this new pathway. Like curation's a good example where it's like, I'm not totally sure curation is good for publishers at all, but I've got a bunch of curators buying my inventory, so I don't know. I'm not turning it off anytime soon. But like, is there a way that like the collective we can build better things that still work for marketers and get more money coming into our pockets at the end of the day? So it's a flipping the table over is hard, but something's got to be done to push forward here to get more money in publishers' pockets.
So isn't the way to know if publishers are happy to ask them? So what are they saying?
I would bet you, well, most publishers who work with us are happy, but they are more, SMB publishers, for lack of a better term, that I think have built business models that work for this sort of environment. I think if you look at the big publishers, like we all know, it's been a struggle for those companies for 20
Large
years
news
now.
sites?
Large news sites, even the large, entertainment and whatever, like properties and media companies. Like I think that, some are doing okay, but it's a struggle.
Do you think it'll segment their inventory too much?
think I think
Or target it too much, maybe?
I think that's part of it. I think that they're selling non-scalable things to some level also. Like, every time I read about like, publishers pivoting to like events, I'm like, I guess if you're like Axios or somebody and like you're really niche and specific, like you can do that. But anybody, maybe that's the point. You can either be big and like a giant pool of inventory that can be optimized, or you should be small and super niche and targeted and know your audience better than anybody. And anybody who's in between those 2 points is really going to struggle, I think.
Makes sense. So ad fraud is the cockroach of digital media. It survives every attempt to kill it. What is the most absurd scam that you've ever seen?
Great question. I mean, to give credit, I do think that the industry is cleaner than it used to be because I think that most of the worst problems were things that we all saw in like 2016, 2017. I mean, even before that, but I feel like 2016, 2017 was when people started getting more transparency so you could find the fraud more easily. And it was all those examples where I think it was Insider who bought $1,000 of their inventory on a DSP and then like tracked it from their side and found that like I forget the number, but like $50 got through to them, and the rest of it was like it was disintegrated into fraudulent sites and people misrepresenting themselves and whatever else. And I think in those days it was like really bad. Again, I think it's better now, but like it's hard to see sometimes where the fraud even may be to be able to root it out.
Yeah, I think they're known as Business Insider again. They changed their
Oh,
name
they
back.
are. They changed their name back.
Yeah,
Got it.
I think
Interesting.
I think no one ever called them Insider besides a few people, and so I think that was.
I guess I was the first one in the world to do it, so now I got to retrain myself.
Yeah, I mean it's still BI to me. I mean it never changed.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny.
So speaking of transparency, it does feel as real as a campaign promise. What does it really mean in this world?
I feel like
Slightly less shady than our competitors?
I think slightly less shady than our competitors. I think the open internet has a lot more transparency than walled gardens do. Like when you spend $1 with Google or Meta, like where did that money go to? How much was taken in fees? Like how performant was your media actually? Like what was put on fraud sites? Like you don't know the answer to any of those questions, I don't think, at that point. I think on the open internet you have better transparency, but yeah, less shady than our competitors is probably the best way to put it.
So why better transparency on the open internet? Shouldn't it be the opposite?
I think that there's a theory that buyers would trust spending on the open. If you look at the total market for digital advertising, which I can't remember if it's advertising or digital advertising, passed $1 trillion this year, right? And when you look at the ways that market is split up, it's like, I forget the number, but $220 billion is Google and $70 billion is Meta and TikTok is $60 billion and Amazon's $50 billion and like all those big numbers. Like once you remove all those giant platforms, like the open internet, something like $50 or $60 billion, and it's the slowest growing part of the overall market. And so there's a theory, which I think has some reality, that the more transparent you can make the open internet, the more buyers will trust what they're buying there and therefore spend more money. Because the fundamental question is, can we grow the open internet's share of the pie faster than it's grown over the last 5 or 10 years, which has been pretty slow.
So if you could Thanos snap one part of the ad ecosystem out of existence, what would it be?
That's a really hard question.
And not a person. I think that might get offensive. Jeff Green. Sorry.
You said it, not
Jeff.
me.
So
yeah,
I'm not gonna. He's a nice guy. I'm not gonna snap him out of existence. I'll just get him more white shirts.
I would still like to get rid of rebroadcasters. Let's use the Chris Kane, Jounce perspective of the world. Like, but buyers should buy through clean, short supply paths. Go to your DSP. They buy from an SSP. The money goes to the publisher. Like that simple path, I think, is the right way that nearly all buying should happen. And there's still so many cases of multi-hop things that cause a lot of problems. So I don't know the type of company per se, but like getting rid of that as a thing, I think would be good.
Do you think SSPs should be buying from SSPs?
I do not think SSPs should be buying from SSPs. I agree with that statement.
So are advertisers even trying anymore? Are they just throwing cash at algorithms and praying for the best?
I think it's a mix. I definitely talk to advertisers who are really savvy and know what they're doing and really in the weeds and understand the guts of it. And then I talk to advertisers who clearly have bought into some MarTech company's view of the internet and they're like, yeah, I will, I trust my partners at Accenture to tell me the right thing to do. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really think you know what you're doing. So I think it's a mix. I think it's hard to generalize because I definitely talk to a lot of buyers who I'm impressed. Like they really know what they're doing, but probably an equal amount of those who don't know what they're doing.
Right, so Raptive seems like the adult in the room, which face it, I shouldn't write these late at night, isn't a high bar in ad tech. Are you fixing the ecosystem or trying to keep it from imploding while everyone else plays with buzzwords?
We like to contribute to trying to fix the ecosystem. Like we cannot do it alone because as a seller of inventory, like the buyers control the money. So the buyers really have to be the ones to set the incentives and set the disincentives and really try to enforce things. Like we can enforce on our network and we do, but we can't enforce much beyond that. And so we try to be out there, partnering with the big sell side companies like, The Trade Desk is a good example. Like we work with them a lot in the tech lab and in other industry trade groups to try to build new things that we think can make the industry cleaner and better. Because I think that when less money goes to bad players, that means more money is available to go to us. And so we are in favor of pushing on those sort of things. So we try, but it takes a village.
How often do you want to throttle your publishers for ignoring you?
Mostly I feel like we have a really good relationship with our publishers. They trust us. They know, they believe that, we are the ones who are setting the standards and are building the things the right way. So I think like when we give them like a framework to operate in, they like buy into it and they believe it and they do it the right way. We work with 5,200 publishers, so occasionally there's somebody who, doesn't agree with the way we do consent management or something, and I'm like, I don't really think the way you're doing it is right. But those are edge cases for us. I feel like for the most part, we have good partners on the publisher side.
So what's the biggest misconception about what Raptive does?
So the vast majority of the publishers we work with are creators. So they are people who are big on TikTok and have a website, or big on Instagram and have a website, and we do all the website stuff for them. And so because we work so much with creators, I think the biggest misconception we get on the buy side is that we're like an influencer marketing agency, and we're like, that is not what we do. Like we can execute a program for you that's sort of like that, but like that is not our business, and like you should not talk to us if that's like just what you want. And so I think it is making people understand that creators are also on the web, and there's a lot of value in reaching their audiences in places outside of their social platforms is a big thing that we're always educating about.
What's the craziest thing you've seen someone monetize? Like hamster selfies or something?
What crazy stuff have I seen? I mean, we've seen all kinds of the AI generated slop, I call it, that we've been kicking out of our network and not letting in, but there's some crazy stuff on that front. Something we see occasionally is like webcam sites that still exist, and they've got 1,000 webcams in all the national parks, and you can watch eagles fly around in Zion or whatever, which is cool on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's like it's so arcane and so niche. It's like stuff like that. It's like really funny to see because it's not what you think about, but to a group of people, it's really interesting. Oh, actually, the most interesting thing I've seen recently is we work with a really big site, which I've now talked to some people who use, which will tell you for a flight you're going to take what the turbulence is going to be. So it's like a database of like turbulence on different plane routes. So it's like if you're like a worried flyer, you can actually go and see like, do I need to take a Dramamine before this flight or not? And I was like, that's actually kind of a cool thing that I never would have thought about before.
If money were no object, what's the one thing you'd add to your playbook tomorrow besides a champagne vending machine?
CTV somehow, like that's our biggest, like we're web only pretty much at this point, and like we'd love to get into the CTV space. Our business model as it exists today is not a great fit for CTV. So, money was no object. Like I'd love to buy Paramount or something like that. Like that seems like it would be a good idea.
So what's next for Raptive?
Figuring out ways to expand is a big deal, which is often a little bit back to your point, like how do we grow the pie of the industry? How do we make the pie bigger? Because then we get a bigger piece of a bigger pie, and we'll take that. So constantly pushing forward there, trying to figure out if there are, a big thing we've been focused on is like increasing the value of our inventory. So it's like, we're displaying video, but it's like, how do we do more high impact? How do we do more native? How do we do more things that can drive more value for advertisers? That drives more value for us and our publishers also. So I think that's a big thing is improving our inventory value.
So next we gotta talk about cookies. I'm tired of talking about cookies, but I
So
give it
tired.
another year. What?
I'm so tired of talking about cookies too.
What's the worst cookie replacement idea you've ever heard?
Probably something to do with blockchain. I can't even remember what it was anymore, but I know there was a blockchain related thing.
Anything to do with
like,
blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the easy answer to this.
Does anyone outside of adtech care about cookies? I should ask that more often.
Like
if I ask my mom, she thinks it's baked goods.
Yeah, and like I think that there is a relatively small portion of the population that like cares deeply about their privacy and therefore like knows about some of these tech things and like doesn't like it. I think the vast majority of people don't care, don't know. And again, I think the giant walled gardens do a far worse job of getting into your privacy than random companies on the web via cookies. So I don't think most people care.
Are advertisers ready for life after cookies, or are we all just faking it?
This industry has a great propensity to, suck the most life out of the old technology while kicking and screaming into a future of a new technology and then rinse and repeat for forever. And so it does feel that like the post-cookie technologies are getting to a pretty strong place at this point, which is good, but we are going to, be dragged kicking and screaming away from cookies whenever or if ever it happens.
If you could invent the ultimate tracking tool, what would it look like? And you can't call it something graph.
I mean, in a funny way, the ultimate tracking tool is the early third-party cookie, like unrestricted tracking of a user across any device, I mean, I suppose you could do that. The cookie is web only, like, I suppose some kind of RFID chip in your brain that is broadcast to every single touch point and connection, for you. So I know exactly what you're looking at. Like that's probably the best thing. So that's a pretty good idea for a sci-fi book.
And now my favorite part, I don't know if you will enjoy it. You're stranded on a desert island. I just like putting ad execs on desert islands. You get one book, one gadget, and one luxury item. What's in your survival kit?
A book. I don't even know. Like, I don't even know what book I would want. Like, could I read the? I mean, I don't even know would I want to read the same book 100 times on the island. Like, I'm not sure. Like, I have to think. That's hard.
Like a raft building book might help.
I suppose that's true.
I'm not sure Toni Morrison would be useful, but
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I guess some kind of like survival book. That's probably what I would need. I guess to that point, like that gets to your gadget too. I want some kind of like Swiss Army knife that's got every single thing on it to, cut into coconuts and tie things together or whatever. Like I think a fancy Swiss Army knife would be a good item.
And luxury item?
I mean, can I have a phone, like a mobile phone that works? is that qualified? That's cheating, no. I guess.
Yeah.
Actually, probably a really comfortable bed. Like, you're going to be sleeping on an island. I'd rather be sleeping in a nice, comfy place.
If you could save one corner of the internet, what would it be?
I'd save the web. I love the wildness, the serendipity, the randomness, the irregularity. Like, I don't like the sanitized rest of the world. So, I'm highly biased, but I like the web.
So Reddit. You bring Reddit.
I would like chaos. I'm a fan of Reddit. I like them a lot.
What's your plan for survival? Do your own raft, Coconut Companion, or a full-on despair?
Coconut Companion right now sounds really appealing. Like going slightly insane feels like a positive thing to me. So, like given my mood,
you don't have to wait for an island.
I know, but it feels easier there.
It gives you an excuse.
That's it. I need the excuse, and the desert island feels like a great reason.
If you could beam an ad into the sky, what would it say? Probably like, help me, advertisers, you're my only hope.
Web. I'm going to keep going back to that.
What's the one ad tech feature you'd be happy never to see again?
Fee?
Fees?
Boy, so sorry, what one ad tech
Feature.
feature? I mean, fees would be good. I hadn't really thought about that, but that's obviously a pretty nice thing. It would be great if ad tech were all nonprofits and took out the minimum requirement to run their businesses, and that was that. So, profit of other companies would be nice as a feature to remove. But I'll keep my profit.
So how long before you turned your island life into a branded content empire? I see Bannister's Island Retreat sponsored by Raptive.
Yeah, I struggle not to want to build a new business in that world. So, although I feel like I'd rather want to build something like a desert island like bar, like fruity drinks, Corona lights, and nice palm tree fans spinning around. Like it's just maybe like a little Margaritaville kind of thing.
So we know you're the titan of ad tech, but what happens when you log off? Do you secretly use ad blockers, or are you loyal to the cause?
I am 100% loyal. I've never even installed an ad blocker. I don't know how to use one, to be honest. My older...
No, but I just noticed that the new iOS allows you to remove sections of the web page.
Yeah, although they changed that under a lot of pressure where it doesn't really work well for ads. Like it works well for other things.
I haven't tried it yet. I just accidentally clicked on it and my header disappeared. I was going, where the heck is the header to my website?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, from what I understand, there was a lot of the pressure put on them when that feature got. It was called Web Eraser originally, was like the feature name, and then they changed the name and they removed a lot of the functionality that made it able to become an ad blocker. And I'm not an Apple person, so haven't used it myself. But my understanding is that it can't really block ads in the current way it works.
Oh, that's too bad. So, what's the nerdiest thing you're into? And does it involve Excel macros?
I'm a video gamer. I always have been.
Me too.
So I still play games, not gobs of them, but that's still I'm not a big TV watcher, so I'll more.
Is that your gaming headset you're using?
This is my gaming headset. Yeah.
Is it PS4? What is it? PS5?
I'm PC games.
Oh, PC games.
Yeah. So mostly
RPGs. What do you do?
I used
FPS?
to love RPGs. So I play Diablo 4 still, which is like, action RPG, but, RPG-ish. I play Hearthstone, which is like a collectible card game online, like Magic, but on the computer. Those are probably the two big games that I play. So I'm PC games all the way.
Yeah, I wanted to try Baldur's Gate, but I haven't done it yet. It's like a year and a half old now.
Yeah, I haven't tried that either. But historically, I was a huge fan of I was a huge World of Warcraft player for a long time. Like I'm a big RPG fan.
Yeah, one of my friends is one of the. She does all the action stuff for World of Warcraft. Like they actually film her, and she's both she's a animator and expert at every sort of weapon known to mankind.
Wow, that's amazing.
So that's what she does for Blizzard. Is they both do the stop action stuff for her, and she does the animation. It's pretty cool.
That's amazing. That's a really cool job.
Anna Maltese, you can look her up. She's also probably one of the best female archers in the world.
Wow.
So how would your kids describe your job, besides he stares at screens all day?
I mean, this is a couple of years ago, but my now 12-year-old, who's probably like 9 at the time, like this was like in the thick of like the cookie apocalypse conversations. He was like, I hear you talking all the time in your office about cookies and getting rid of cookies. If you're going to do that, can you replace them with something like cupcakes? So like, I think that's where his head still generally is probably. I think, my kids hear me talking on lots of Zoom calls and sounding quasi-serious. So I hope they think I do good work and whatever, but you never know with kids.
Do you have an obsession that's non-ad tech related?
Again, I go back to video games. Like if I retired tomorrow, like, I would get heavily back into gaming and really like spend a lot of my time on it. It's something I've liked since I was a kid.
What's like a favorite old school game? Maybe like you have any like old dual floppy games you liked?
The Wing Commanders were great.
Well, those were fun, yeah.
Those were great. Syndicate, if you remember that game, was a pretty amazing game. I was a huge fan of the Ultima games, the Bard's Tale games, Wizardry.
Yeah, Ultima's too bad. I mean, after Ultima Online, nothing came out then.
Yeah, they were phenomenal, and Ultima Online had potential, but didn't get there.
Well, it's huge. Ultima Online was huge. It just,
I guess that's true.
For its time.
For its time, exactly. It did not become World of Warcraft in any universe, but it was a cool game.
It was. I remember Starflight.
That was a great game. Yeah.
I wonder why they never redid it with just like the same idea, but with modern graphics. So I think it'd be great.
Yeah. That's a great game to bring back.
If you weren't an ad tech, well, video gaming. What completely random job would you pick? I guess it would be professional video gamer.
Professional, I'm too old to compete in like, StarCraft leagues or League of Legends or whatever, but I might go, when I got out of college, I started a video game website, so I might just go back to
Me
not
too.
monetizing websites, but like
That's how I got in this
running 'em.
industry. Is I started FGN.com and I sold it to an ad company.
I did exactly.
Feature games.
I started OGR.com and sold it to a publisher.
It was. And before we go, what's the one thing about you that no one asks, but they should?
You asked a lot about the video game, so we went down that path. I always like it. I mean, for me at least, but I think it's always interesting when I hear for other people, like to hear like really their history. Like, why did you get into this from the very beginning, and like really understanding people's motivations and who is really passionate about something versus who just does it because it's a job. So I was, like to dig into like the whys behind people
And that's a wrap on the ADOTAT Show. Huge thanks to Paul Bannister for dropping adtech truth bombs and making us all feel like we need a stiff drink just to process this industry. From cookies crumbling to publishers pivoting to Please Love Us events, Paul reminded us that digital media is basically a chaotic circus. But hey, at least someone's out there trying to fix it. Massive shout out to our sponsors, Troutman Amin and Incremental, for supporting the show, and for not charging hidden fees or phantom impressions. Don't forget to subscribe. Share this with a friend who still thinks blockchain banners are a good idea. And as always, stay bold, stay curious, and know more than you did yesterday.